Hello everyone. Hello, welcome to Code Hong Kong Third Public Workshops. And our topic is about basic streams making in Code. So here is our schedules. Our schedules have two sessions, Session A and Session B. Session A will cover Part 1 and Part 2, which is about the custom button, about Close button and button UV map adoptions. And Part 2 is about ring and buckle creations from 2D patterns to 3D trims in Code. And Session B is about the snap button creations and applications. And the last part is about Eyelet, Drawcord, and creations and applications. For Session A, we will cover the custom button for Part 1. So here is the garment preview, and we will do the practice on this change code. Yes, and in this change code, we will apply the custom button with UV map adoptions, like this one. So before applying the UV map, we need to add the buttons, and I will share some tips for you about adding buttons and buttonholes along pattern outline. So you can go to CLO, and then firstly, you can go to library and add today's materials. So after you click add, and you can go to desktop, find Session A materials. Just click one click and select the folder. And then you will see Session A is added in the library. So this is a shortcut for today's practice. So you can double click on it to see we have two files. One folder is for the materials about the buttons UV map. Another is the project files for today's practice. So please double click to open these garment files. Okay. So now you will get this screen, and we will apply the buttons and buttonholes in Code. So please change to buttons. Please use button 2 to apply the button first. So I think all of you may be so familiar with adding buttons by left click. And the tips we would like to share is about adding buttons along the outline. So you can just right click on the pattern outline here. And then you will see a pop-up windows. And you can also preview the buttons and the outlines here. So for these functions, you can change the start positions of the buttons and also the replicate. So for the distance, for this practice, I will use 18 for the distance, and the interval we will change to 30. And the replicate interval, I will keep using 100 mm. And the number of the buttons, I will change to 3 because we will add 3 buttons on the top. So please use this setting. And you can also preview the result in 2D and also 3D windows. So you can click OK now. So for these actions, you can apply the buttons quickly with certain distance along the outline. And then please change to buttonhole in 3D windows. So you can click it and then move to here of this placket and also right click on it. So you will also get a pop-up windows here. For the buttonhole starting position distance, I will use 28. So you may wonder why we use 28 instead of 18, because we need to kind of the width of the zipper. So I will use 28 mm. And for the interval, keep using 30 mm. And the replicate interval will keep using 100 mm. And the numbers will be 3 for the buttonholes. And then you can click OK. So now we have 3 buttons and buttonholes. After that, I will share another tips. The second tips is about fasten all button at the same time. So we can use fasten button tooth. So please select fasten button tooth. And for the traditional methods, you can just left click on the button and go to link with the buttonhole. And to fasten them with at the same time, you can left click and draw an area by dropping your mouse. And then you will see your mouse with 3 arrows. Okay, and then you can click on the first buttonhole. So be careful. You should select the corresponding buttonhole. If you select this one, maybe incorrect buttonhole, and then the linkage will be incorrect. So be careful. You can just left click and then all the button will be fastened once. And then you can go to simulate to see the result after fastening it. So it may take some seconds, and then you can turn off simulate after it becomes stable. Okay, and then I will go through about the custom UV map. So what is the UV map purpose? It is mainly for apply your custom textures and your logo on the code buttons. And buttons UV map is in Photoshop file format. The UV map materials can be found in Code library. So you can go to Code and then go to Code library and hardware and trims. You can double click on it. And then you access these pages. After that, you can go to button and buttonhole file by double click. So you will get 3 files here. And today's main topic is about button UV texture. So when you double click on it, you will see there are a lot of PSD files. So how can you apply this PSD file? You can go back to the previous page by double click on this folder. And then right click on button UV texture and copy the path. Right click on it and copy the path. And then you can open a document, a Windows, and then place this address and press enter. And click enter. So you can directly access this folder with UV map in Code library in your computer folders. Okay, so I think you have already accessed these pages. And then we need to go back to Code for doing some adjustment first. So now we are using the default buttons. So you can use select and move buttons to click it to see what buttons you are using. So now you can see in Object Browser button, and we are using the default buttons. So you can click on it and go to Property Editor. So in Property Editor, you can change the shapes and other details of the buttons. So today's, you can choose the third button shapes include. And if you would like to review the button shape's name, you can just move your button and point at it, and you can see the name of the button shapes. Okay, so I will choose the style-free buttons. And then you see the button shapes is changed in 3D windows. After that, I will reopen the button UV texture map folder. So we provide different Photoshop files. So which one should we use? You should use the Photoshop files according to what shapes you are using, what button shapes you are using. And we suggest you to copy the files for the editing so that you won't replace the template. And I also provide the materials in Section A materials folder. You can access part 1 to see the materials. So we have two folders, two files. This is the default one, the template, and I also have the demo. So the template will be like this. You can see there are different sections, including the front, the back, and also the buttonhole inside. And what you need to do is to place, you can just drop this materials in Photoshop and apply it. And you need to rescale it to place on it. So after you have placed on it, okay, you also need to place the outside, that means this area, and also don't forget the back side and the buttonhole. And the outcome will be like this one. And these Photoshop files I already put in the materials folder, and you can use it afterwards. So you can see we separate different layers for different sections. So this is easier for you to the further editing. So after we have these materials, we can apply it in enclo. So I will go back to closed windows and keep selecting Object Browser and Default Buttons and Property Editors. And in here, you can see there is a texture sections. So to apply the texture, you can just open the window and then go to Desktop, Section A Materials, Part 1, and then put the PSD file there and open it. So you will see the Photoshop files. It's added for the texture. And also for the 3D windows, the texture UV map with the logo and the unique texture is applied in 3D windows. So we have already applied this in quick few step, and some users may wonder, if I want to edit in Photoshop, do I need to re-upload this texture file? Actually, code is compatible with Photoshop files. So if you do any editing, you can just press F5 here. This is another tips to refresh the texture in code once you edit the UV map in Photoshop. So we also include different samples of 4 types of buttons UV map. Okay. So to fine-tune the buttons, you can see we also have the button thread. So keep clicking the default buttons and the property editor and move to the thread section now. You can just left click on it and you will see we are using the same materials as button. You can just turn it off and then remove the texture for the thread. And then you will see the thread will become white color. After that, you can go to color settings and click on this box to change the color. So you can use eyedropper to select the button color. And then you can also edit for the future usage and click OK. So for now, we have finished the button. And you may see the top buttons on the collar. And you can see it is more natural because we have already changed the buttonhole shapes and also changed the buttonhole color and the binding positions. So how can we change the binding positions and also the buttonholes? You can go to Object Browser and then click buttonhole to edit its properties. So we are using default buttonhole now. So please click on it and move to Property Editor at the bottom. And you can change the shapes as you want and also change the color and other properties. So you can also use eyedropper to select the color or use the color you added before and click OK. And for changing the binding positions, you can keep using Select Move Button Tool and then select all the buttonholes and move to Property Editor. So you will see the binding position now. We are using the default one, which is 50, the values. So you can just change the bar to change the values. So you will see when I change the values and the bar, my buttonhole binding positions and will be changed. So you can also type certain values like 60 in here, in the binding positions. And when you zoom it in, you can see it's become more natural of the binding positions. And also for the 2D windows, you will also see a green point here. This green point is representing your binding positions. And then we finish the section A, but you may see some buttons is not stable, so you can also turn on simulate to make it become more stable or reset the buttons. Okay, so now I think you already applied the buttons with UV map. And then we will go to part 2 about wing and buckles creations and applications. So you can see that this D-wing and also the buckles is actually created by code 2D patterns, from code 2D patterns to 3D object. So we will talk about the D-wing first. And you can also see my demonstrations. So before creating the D-wing trims, you can save the file save as project. And then you can save as the folders on desktop, section A materials, and you can just change the file name, practice, and save it. And after you save it, you can create a new file by clicking File and New. We will create a new file for making the trims. So for this avatar, we can just select it by Select Move Tooth and then press Delete to delete it. So your 3D windows and 2D windows will be empty. And then we will make the D-wings trims. So for a easier preview and editing, I suggest to zoom it in 2D windows. You can zoom in to see this cross and also 3D windows. So you can see more details and edit it easily in both windows. And then please use ellipse tubes. And we will use ellipse tubes for the creations. So where can you find it? You can left click and press here, the 4 buttons for a few seconds and select ellipse tubes, or you can also press E on your keyboard, this shortcut to change to ellipse tubes. Now we need to create a circle. You can left click on it to create a circle by sizing, by diameters, and the width and height will be 55 mm and 55 mm. Okay, so you can just type it and you will see the circle on here and click OK. And you will get a circle here. So, and then we need to use transform pattern tool to do some fine tunings. Please click it. Please select this circle you create and go to property editors and change the particle distance from 5 to 1 mm. You can just type the numbers and press enter. And you will see there is a pop-up windows. So you can just click yes, because we are now handling these fine trims and patterns. So particle distance in a more values won't affect the computer speeds. And then we need to create an internal line for cutting these pieces to 2. So please use internal polygon and line tubes in 2D windows. So you can zoom in to draw a internal lines at the middles. So to finish it, you can double click on it or press a enter to finish the line creations. And then you can use edit pattern tool to select this line, and this line will be highlighted in yellow. And right click on it and cut it. Right click to cut it. So it will be separate to 2 pattern pieces. And then we will use transform patterns to select the left-hand side pieces. And then just delete it. You can press delete on your keyboards or right click on the patterns to delete it. So we will have only half circle in 2D windows. And then we will change to another editing tools to smooth the corner. So please press few seconds to change the tools to smooth curve. So now you will change to this icon and these tubes. So So for changing the corner to a smooth corner, you can left click and then drag your mouse. If you would like to have a certain values, please keep clicking on the left click and then right click, and you will find a pop-up windows. So you can type the values of line 1 and line 2 to change its angles. And I will use 2 mm and 2 mm for line 1 and line 2. And if you would like to lock the ratios, you can click this button to lock the ratios. Okay. And then the curvature, I will keep using 50% and click OK. And you can also preview the result in 2D windows and click OK. So you will find the corner will become more smooth. And for the bottom, and if you would like to save time, you can just right click on the point. Right click on it, and then the pop window will be shown directly. And this time, we also need to type 2 mm. As we already locked the ratios, so you just need to type 1 columns and click OK. And now we have a half moon shapes. After that, please move to transform pattern tools. So for the 2D patterns editing, you may need to change different tools for different usage. So please choose transform pattern tool to select all the outline and the whole patterns. And then you can right click on it. And we will have offset as internal line. Please click on it. And then we can offset the internal line according to the pattern outline. So for the distance, I will press 1 mm. I will enter 1 mm, and you can preview it. And click OK. So I will have a 1 mm distance internal shapes like this. And you can see the internal shapes is highlighted in yellow color. And you can right click on it and convert it to whole. So now I think you will get these shapes patterns, and you can also zoom it in to see the 3D windows to see the patterns. And then we will do some fine tunes for the details. So we will apply the thickness on the patterns. So before apply the thickness, we suggest you to turn on thick texture surface in 3D windows to see the thickness of your patterns. If you keep using the normal texture surface, you won't see any thickness. And then we can select the patterns and move to Property Editor. And you will see there is a column about Add Thickness Rendering. Now we are using 0 values, so please change to another values, which is 1 mm. 1 mm. So after I change it, you can see the 3D windows. I have increased the thickness. If you are not satisfied with the thickness, you can keep increasing it, like 2, to make it become more thick. So the D-ring is complete, and you can save the files by Save As Project. Please save it as project. And you can save it as desktop for the usage or save as the Section A materials. and save here. And I will name the file name as bwing. So it is a project file types. Please save it. So you can do future editing and import this file for the garments later on, and I will explain it next sessions. Also, please go to Files and Export, and we will export as another file types for another usage. And I will also explain the details later. So please export it as OBJ object. File export object. And you can also find the files in Section A materials in desktop and name the file name as the ring. And you can see the file type is OBJ file. And please save it. And after you save it, you will see there is a pop-up window about OBJ export settings. And please follow my settings about select all patterns in object, and then single object, and thick texture. Remember, it's thick, not thin, and the scale will be mm as default. And for the access, I will keep the default settings. And file, I will save it as texture image with file path. And you can click OK. So when you open Section 8 materials, you will get this file, and I will explain later on. So for the followed practice, I will introduce the buttonhole creations. We will create the outer part and the inner part. So the outer part will look like this one. We will have a frame, and I will go through step by steps. So please create a new files enclo. And you will have the empty windows now. So for create a buckles, you also need to use the create pattern tools. So please press a second for changing the button, the pattern creation tools to rectangle. And we will have a rectangle shapes creations. Okay, so you can go to the center part in 2D and 3D windows. And we always suggest you to place the patterns and draw the patterns over the y-axis, like this one. So it won't go inside the ground. So you can left click to create the rectangle. And the size will be 40 mm times 60 mm. The width will be 40 and the height will be 60. And you can click OK. And now you can get a rectangle patterns. And then please use transform patterns to select this rectangle and go to property editor on right hand side. And please change the particle distance to 1, just like the step we did before. 1 and press enter, and also click yes. And then we can smooth the corner by using smooth curve tool. So you can just right click on the corner point, and then you can lock the ratio first and change the values. I will use 5 mm this time. So you can also preview the angle is more curved than before. and click OK. And also, please apply the same setting for another corners. Type 5 mm to round the corner by length. Okay, so you will see the result will be like this. And then we will create a hole. So before create a hole, we need to have a internal lines. So please use transform pattern to select the whole patterns. So you can see all the outlines is highlighted and you can right click on it. And offset as internal line. And you will also see a pop-up windows. And for the distance, I will use 5 mm this time. Okay, the number of offset is 1. And you can click OK. So you will have a rectangle internal shapes. After that, keep selecting it and then convert to hole. So you will get these patterns like this. And to have a other adjustment, you can select these patterns and be careful. Don't select the inner part only. You need to select the whole pattern. So you will see all of them will be highlighted in yellow in both 3D and 2D windows. And you can move to Property Editor to change its thickness. So this time, we will use 5 mm for testing. So you can see the thickness will be so thick, the pattern thickness will be so thick in 3D windows. So you can change to 4 to see another effect. And if you would like to edit the edges curvature, you can move to Property Editor and then go upper. And you will find another column. So now I think you already turned on the curvature side geometric. And for editing the curvature, you can edit the percentage, like 50. And after changing the values, you can see the edges effect is changed. So for the largest values, we provide the most curved appearance. And for the smaller values, you will see the shapes is more sharpened. The first part is complete. And then for the inner part, we will create the inner part for the buckles. So before creating this part as rectangle patterns, we need to check the height. So how can we check the height? You can use edit pattern. Edit pattern this time to select the line. So I will select the internal line height. So you can see the values is 50 in 2D windows and also Property Editor. So you know the height and you can start to create the rectangle patterns for the inner part. So please go to rectangle. Please use rectangle tools to create the rectangles. You can just draw it or left click to type certain values for creating the rectangles. The width will be 3 mm and the height will be 50. And if you draw the rectangle by hand, make sure the height should be larger than 50. You can't before. Okay. So after clicking OK, you have the new patterns. And then please use transform pattern tool to select both of them, the inner part and the outer part. So they are all highlighted, and please right click on them. And then move to align. And we need to align these patterns. Please click align and then center. Aligned, center, and the patterns will be aligned as center. And also, right click again to align the middles. So you can now see the patterns in 2D windows are perfectly matched according to the center and the middle. So for the 3D windows, they are not aligned. So you need to click Reset 2D Arrangement or in 3D windows. So these buttons help your 3D patterns arrangement. Follow the 2D patterns windows arrangement, so they will be aligned. So after you click on it, you can see they are all the same. And then we can have some fine-tuning for the inner part. Just select it and move to Property Editor and change the particle distance to 1. And then click Yes. And then you can change the thickness of rendering. And I suggest the values will be around 1 mm. You can also adjust the values as you want, according to your design. And you need to make sure you are turning on thick texture surface to see the thickness. And now we have these buckles. So please save it as a project file. Save it as project file like last time. We create the wing. And the file name, I will name it as buckle. And the file type will be project file. And you can click Save. And also, don't forget to export it as OBJ. Maybe you may wonder what is the difference between OBJ and OBJ selected. Actually, OBJ will export all the OBJ, the patterns, and the avatar in your project files. And OBJ selected just for selecting certain patterns, just like the frame, and you can click Export OBJ selected to export the frame only. If you don't select the inner part, you won't export it. So this time, I will keep using Export OBJ for export all the patterns at the same time. And then the file name will be buckles. And click Save. And this time, the setting will be the same as last time. And click OK. And then we have already created these buckles and the wing. And for the last part, I will cover the trims applications. We have 3 methods. So the first method is about garment file with freeze. And I also list out some difference between these three methods. So I will go through one by one, and I will go through the first method first. So what we need is a garment file, and the load type will be add. Okay, so please go to Section A, Materials. You can open the project file you save by double-click. And the open project type will be open and with garment and avatar, and click OK. So you will see the change code file again. And now we will apply the buckles. So you already saved the buckle in project file and also OBJ files. So I will use the buckle in project file. Is that PRJ? And you can right click on it and add to workspace. Remember, right click on it and add to workspace. And the setting will be add project. Load type will be added. Project type will be garment, and click OK. And you will see a window asking you about loading the avatar pose and size file. Press No. So after adding these buckle files, you will see the buckles will be added in both 3D and 2D windows at the bottom. So this place is according to your file saving and the creation enclo. Here, you will see the adjustment in 3D windows and 2D windows. In this method, we can do the adjustment in both windows. But you need to freeze all of them. And when you do the adjustment or the movement, just like the position adjustment, you need to confirm you are clicking all the patterns at the same time. And then freeze it. After that, you can just move it by gizmo tool or the tag tool. Just click on it and fine-tune the positions in 3D windows, like this way. And our tips is to zoom in and change the angles, the view angles, according to your needs. And then around putting the buckles on the belt here, in front of the belt. And how can we make sure the belt is passed through the buckles? You can use select mesh tools, boss, in 3D windows. Okay, and how can we find the belt positions? You can just left click on it to draw an area. So the area you select is highlighted in green. And then you can move to 2D pattern windows and zoom in, and you will find the belt patterns is on the top. And you can also find the selected area in green. And then you can select again to draw the area, like this one. And adjust the certain mesh positions by gizmo tool. So to pull it out, we suggest you to use the blue arrow. Okay. And then turn on simulations to see the effect and stop simulations. And you can also use select move tool. Go back to select move tool in 3D windows. to see the result. So now you can see the patterns is passed through by the trims by using method 1. And if you would like to change the patterns, gap, or the collisions, you need to select them, the buttons, the buckles, patterns, and go to property editors. You can still adjust it in both 3D and 2D windows. And then change the add thickness collisions to make the gap become more thinner. And I will change to 1 mm. So actually there are not standard values for the collisions. It depends on your buckles or your trim's thickness. So you can turn on simulate to see the result is more fine than before, like this way. So this is the first way of the trims applications. And then for the second one, I will go through the method of OBJ and load as alpha type. So this method we need is about OBJ files. So that's why I asked you to save 2 files type. So this time we will load as alpha type. So please go back to the closed windows. And you can use select and move to delete the patterns of the buckles. And we will try the second method. It may take some time to remove it. Okay. And after that, we will add another materials about buckle object. Please right-click and add to workspace. Right-click on the buckle object and add to workspace. And you will see the window is about the information to add the OBJ. The load type is add, and the object type will be load as alpha type. And the scale, I will keep using mm because we saved mm for this trim scale before. And click OK. So now you will see the buckle object is loaded and added in 3D windows. And in 2D windows, it is invisible. So you can do the adjustment in 3D windows only. So for this time, the difference with method 1, you can click any point on the trims and move all the patterns and the object at one time. So you can use the gizmo tool to move it. Okay, and also zoom in to see the details. Okay, and then you can also put on the same area like last time. And then another difference with method 1, you can change the scale in 3D windows directly by clicking these tools on left-hand side next to the gizmo. After you click it, you will see your gizmo tool will change to the scaled setting. You can just rescale it by ratio or just change the height or the width. And also the thickness in blue arrow. So if you would like to change the position again, you need to turn the scale tool off. Okay, and then for this time, if you want to pass through, make your belt patterns pass through the buckles, you also need to use select mesh boss. And then you will see the mesh is appeared, and you can select it in 3D windows. The highlighted area represent in both 3D and 2D windows, and you can select again the certain areas in 2D windows. And then click on 3D windows. Left click to show the gizmo tooth and then pull it out. After that, you can turn on simulate. And then the pattern of belt will pass through the buckles. And you can click select move tools to see the result and turn off the select mesh mode. But when you zoom it in, you can see there are some gap between the trims and the patterns. So you can use select and move tool to select the trims. And then it will highlight it in 3D windows. And you can go to property editors and change the skin offset. So now we are using 3 mm. So we should decrease the values to 1 mm and simulate again to see. And you can see the gap will be decreased. And you can also change to smaller values to make it get closer to the patterns. So for the comparison, the collisions, you can see method 1 and method 2. Their collision setting is in different names, but the purpose are the same. Okay. And then I will talk about the last methods. It is about the OBJ file type with load as trims. Okay, and then for here, I will add a D-ring for the end of the belt. So this time, please right-click on the D-ring object and add to workspace. And also, the load type will be add, and the object type, please select load as trims. Scale will be mm as default, and click OK. And you will also see the trims is added in the 3D windows only. So the difference between the second method and this method, you can not only use, okay, I will add it again. The difference is about the trims owns the good tools. So you will see the difference in our chart. So this method not only provides the gizmo tooth for adjustment in 3D windows, but also the glue tools. And glue tools provide the methods for you to stick the trims on pattern surface. So you can have the interactions and the movement while doing the simulations. Okay, so now you can see here is the glue tools on the right hand side next to the gizmo tools. You can just click it, turn it on, and then move the window and click on the pattern directly on the belt. Okay, so this area, okay, you can zoom it to this area to do some fine tunings of the positions. When you turn on simulate, you can see the trims have some interactions and will follow the pattern's movement. And if you want to adjust the positions, you can also use the gizmo tool and change the angles like this way. So this method is mainly for the patterns with some interactions, the trims with some interactions with the patterns, like the rings, buttons, zippers. And you can also rescale of your trims like this way. After we apply it, we can change its materials type and color in property editors. You can change the type. Now we are using matte, and you can change to plastic or metallic. And I will use metal for demo. So you will see there is a demo D-ring. And for changing the color, you can keep changing the setting in property editors. To click the box and then change the color, you can use eyedropper to drop the color and click OK. And for the buckles, you can also select it and then change its properties in property editors, like changing the materials type to plastic this time. And then change the color to the olive color, like this one. So you can have the more details on the trims. After this trims creations and also applications, and I think you will note more about the object create in Claude, the trims create in Claude. And if you would like to see the difference, you can review our handouts. And I also provide some examples for different methods. Just like method 1, you can use for buckles and ring creations. And method 2 is the same as method 1, include the buckles and ring creations. And for method 3, it's about the ring, zipper slider, puller, button, eyelet, ribbon, cordon, glitter, etc. So I hope this chart will provide you with more information.